Yo guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I'm going to be going over 5 different Filip Forsberg trades that I think can actually happen. Now we've seen a lot of drama over the Nashville Predators star, a player that's been in a lot of trade rumors as of recent over the past week. It seems like for Nashville, the chances of them re-signing Forsberg are getting slimmer and slimmer by the day, and a trade is more and more likely as well. But what will happen with Filip Forsberg? Where could he potentially go, and what would a Filip Forsberg trade actually look like? We're going to be answering all those questions, so make sure you stick around throughout the entire video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't. 50% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so if you like hockey and if you like trade rumors, this channel is the place to be. Now, we've seen a couple of analysts talk about the situation in the last couple of weeks, but Elliotte Friedman gave us a ton of new details on this situation in his latest 32 Thoughts, where he said this: the Nashville Predators know that to re-sign Filip Forsberg, the AAV must be higher than Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson's $8 million figure. Forsberg knows that if he wants to stay in Tennessee, he's going to have to come in lower than Roman Jossi's $9 million. Then he goes on to say this: there's time. I believe there is will for both sides to get there. If we get to the deadline and the Predators don't believe they can sign him, that's when a trade becomes possible. GM David Poile could keep an unsigned Forsberg past March 21st, but it's not in his preference and won't happen if progress isn't being made. So again, we get some confirmation here that the Preds will still have a decent chance of signing him, but if there's no progress or little progress done by the trade deadline or the week of, a Filip Forsberg trade is imminent and will be very likely to happen. And I think there will be a ton of teams out there wanting to get this absolute stud. And there is one situation that is making this Filip Forsberg situation especially precarious for the Nashville Predators, and that is the fact that he is having his best season ever. As a potential UFA, Filip Forsberg in 39 games has 26 goals, 18 assists for 44 points. His value is at an all-time high, and if you do re-sign him, yes, he will still be good, but I doubt that Filip Forsberg is going to have a better season than this. In terms of play driving, in terms of production, he has been among the NHL's elites and most valuable, being a huge reason why the Preds have been such a solid playoff team this year, and it makes it such a harder situation for Nashville. In the end, although there is still a chance he will re-sign, there's only a month to go until the NHL trade deadline, and things will be happening fast. And in my opinion, with the way this situation is trending, I think a trade at this point, honestly, is more likely than not. Even though the Nashville Predators are in a playoff situation, in a playoff spot, if Filip Forsberg doesn't want to sign, then the Preds just have no choice. So let's just assume that Filip Forsberg is available and traded on trade deadline day. What would those trades look like, and what teams would be interested? So we're going to go through 5 different trade scenarios with 5 different NHL teams to see what could work in a Filip Forsberg trade. Now, we're going to start out with the first team here that I think could complete a Filip Forsberg deal. This, in my opinion, is one of the most realistic teams out there to actually acquire Forsberg, and that is the Calgary Flames, a team that's been incredibly hot since the start of the second half, and I think this is a team that could stand to add an even bigger addition onto that forward group. Yes, they went out and got Tyler Toffoli, which makes things a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, I think they could get another addition, and Filip Forsberg will be an interesting one. I think he'd definitely be a rental, unlike Tyler Toffoli, that could be added onto that top 6. Now, to me, it's interesting because you got Mangiapane as that second line left wing, and obviously Gaudreau as the first line left wing, but let's say they do put Forsberg on that second line and bump down Mangiapane, he would become one of the best third line players in the entire NHL, and would again increase that Calgary Flames depth. Now, for the actual trade itself, for the Calgary Flames, I think they'll acquire Filip Forsberg, 50% retained. In exchange to the Nashville Predators, I think they'll get Dylan Dubé, a 2022 Calgary and Florida second round pick. Center, that's depth and is for cap reasons included in Brad Richardson, and Juuso Välimäki as well as Connor Zary. Now, there's a lot of moving parts in this trade, obviously, but one of the big things is that the Flames have already traded their first round pick in the Tyler Toffoli trade, which means that there is a lot more of a difficulty here, I think, and a lot more of other prospects included. Juuso Välimäki is a guy that just hasn't stepped in fully into that Flames lineup yet completely, especially this year, and could be good defensive depth for the Preds. You also got, of course, a big one in Dylan Dubé, who hasn't really broken out truly with the Flames either, but could do so on the Preds. And then you got other prospects like Connor Zary, who could have some improvements in the Nashville Predators system. A lot to like there, I think, on Nashville and Calgary side, and even though it is a big price to pay for a rental, at the same time, this might be it for Calgary to truly go for it. Even if they end up re-signing Johnny Gaudreau, this could be the best team they have in the next few seasons. Now, the thing is, you might expect for all 5 of these teams to be teams to go out and get Forsberg and have him as a rental, but only 2 of the 5 teams I'm going to mention today will actually just want him as a rental. I think the other 3 teams are going to want to extend him in a potential trade. And a good example of that comes in at number 2. The second team that I think will end up trading for Filip Forsberg, I think, is the LA Kings, a team that could use some big additions onto that top 6. Elliotte Friedman also mentioned earlier that the Kings have inquired about JT Miller and are potentially looking at trading for a Canucks forward. Well, if they do go for the Nashville Predators, Filip Forsberg, I think it could be an even better fit. To me, the biggest weakness on this LA Kings team could be the left wing side. Even though the defense could use some more depth, the left wing side is fairly lacking for a team that's supposed to be pushing and competing for the NHL playoffs. But if they do get Filip Forsberg, I think that could push them over the edge in the playoff hunt. When it comes to an actual trade, though, the LA Kings will acquire Filip Forsberg, 25% retained, which would put him down to a $4.5 million cap hit for this season. In exchange, though, to the Preds, they will end up getting Alex Chiarot, former first overall pick, 5th overall pick, or for not first overall pick, 5th overall pick. Andreas Athanasiou, a 2022 first round pick, and a 2023 third round pick. There we go, officially. I don't know what was going on for my brain for those few seconds, but you know what I mean. When it comes to this deal, this might actually be one of the best offers the Nashville Predators get. I think the LA Kings are in a prime position to be able to trade for a guy like Forsberg. They have a multitude of prospects that they could be willing to give up, and although Turcotte hasn't developed amazingly up to this point, in the Preds system, he could be another guy to come onto that roster and get some added potential and some added opportunity and have it go his way. You also got Athanasiou, who could be a solid bottom 6 for the Nashville Predators. Obviously, a first-round pick on top of that. There is some real potential here, I think, for the Preds, and if they are going to trade for Forsberg, I think the LA Kings will be one of the most realistic and likely teams to go after him with a strong offer. And in my opinion, the Kings are one of those teams that will definitely prioritize extending him in a contract. It's been done before where a team will go and trade for a guy at the deadline to make sure that they can extend him and have him long term. I'm pretty sure it happened with Jean-Gabriel Pageau as a weird example, but you know exactly what I'm meaning. When it comes to the Kings, I think they'll want to keep him as long as humanly possible, and I don't think they'd trade for him if he's just a rental. But now going on to the next team here, the third team that I think is going to trade for Filip Forsberg, or at least be close to trading for Filip Forsberg at the trade deadline, and that is the New Jersey Devils. In my opinion, the Devils are actually a really sneaky team around this deadline. Even though they aren't going to compete for a playoff spot this season, they're looking to compete especially for next year. Now, this deal might be a little bit weird and a little bit wacky, but bear with me. The Devils, we know, desperately want to make the playoffs. That management group, that ownership group desperately wants to win at any cost possible. And obviously with how this season has gone, specifically with injuries and maybe some of that forward group, I feel like the New Jersey Devils will want to prioritize competing and truly getting better for 2023. So in doing that, they will acquire Filip Forsberg, extend him, and have him as a core part of this Devils forward group. For the Nashville Predators, in exchange, they will receive Pavel Zacha, Yanni Koskinen, and a 2023 first round pick. Now, this is a huge gamble for the New Jersey Devils, because if they aren't back to playoff contention next year, this could be a huge addition for the Preds. The 2023 draft is absolutely excellent, but I think for the Devils, it's more so just trying to compete and confirm that they're competing in 2023. If they have that first round pick gone, they can't go back to the draft, and they don't have any other backup plan, which might not be the greatest decision, but for a Devils team that desperately wants to compete and get back to that level, that might just be a sign for that organization that enough is enough, and if they are to fail again, it will mean disastrous consequences. So there's even more pressure on the line, which there should be in New Jersey to compete. So in my opinion, it might just be a stepping stone to even more additions in the offseason that we might see on the defense. In terms of the goaltending, there could be some more options there, but I think for the Devils, this would be a really interesting trade. But just on paper, I think he'd be a huge addition. There's not a ton of players on that left wing side, but they're still able to keep other prospects like Alexander Holtz and Luke Hughes in the system, which is definitely important. And I think, honestly, Filip Forsberg around Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier would be a slam dunk move. And even though it might be a weird offer, at the same time, I don't see the Devils trading their 2022 first-round pick, since that could be in the top 5, and I also don't see them trading an Alexander Holtz deal to make this happen, since I still think they'll want to keep a stud like that in the system. So I think the Devils will have to give some sort of offer and some sort of value back, and I think the 2023 first-round pick is a great way of doing that, and it is definitely the cornerstone of that deal. But now we're going to move on to the fourth team that I think will trade for Filip Forsberg. This is a team that I think is extremely interesting, and I think we could actually see a top forward for top defenseman trade for the first time in a while, and that is the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the trade I'm proposing here is pretty interesting. For the Anaheim Ducks, they will receive Filip Forsberg, but in exchange, the Nashville Predators, they will receive Hampus Lindholm, a Braden Tracy forward prospect, as well as a 2022 fourth-round pick. Now, this is interesting. Although it's not a one-for-one, it's a top defenseman for a top forward, and at the same time, both of these players would be rentals, perhaps. But I feel like both of these teams would want to try and get extensions for the other. Now, when it comes to Hampus Lindholm especially, he's a guy that's kind of lost his step, I think, over the past couple of years, but is still potentially in his prime. And I think for the Nashville Predators, they've done a great job with some of their defensemen over the years, and I think could turn Hampus Lindholm's career around and get him back to a top-pairing defenseman. Meanwhile, for Filip Forsberg on that Ducks team, I think he'd be absolutely amazing, alongside guys like Zegras, alongside other players like Sonny Milano, and great players in that top 6. He would really add, though, to that top 6 for the future, and I feel like for the Ducks, in the next few years, Forsberg would be an absolute force on that team, and would, kind of like the Devils, turn them into a much better contender over the next few years. And I think for the Preds, at the same time, even though they are trading Forsberg, this would be one of the best options to get NHL players now, and specifically Hampus Lindholm, who would turn that defense into a much more formidable one playoff-wise, and I think could have a lot more potential there. It's a really interesting deal, but I'm not sure if it'll actually happen, because again, I feel like for both teams, they'd want to have extensions with their top players. But now moving on to the fifth team that I think will trade for Filip Forsberg, and in terms of teams, I'm going to say this, it might be the most absolute wild idea, but you guys know, I like to go crazy, I like to think of inventive things, and this is certainly a creative idea. For the fifth team that I think could trade for Filip Forsberg, I have the Washington Capitals. Now, I know what you might be thinking. The Capitals, after all this time, reacquiring Filip Forsberg, well, I think it would actually be an interesting idea. Now, for the Caps, he would probably be a rental, but at the same time for this Capitals team, there's only so many more years where you can expect this absolute legend play from Alex Ovechkin. Even though he's the ageless wonder at this point, there's still an expiration date there. I still think for the Capitals, getting a guy like Filip Forsberg would change the identity of this team. They've been sliding over the past couple of months. This is a team that has some desperate woes, especially in the forward group, and I feel like Filip Forsberg would add to that. Now, they might lose some depth, but at the same time, Forsberg would be almost a rejuvenation for that team. For the Preds, in exchange for Filip Forsberg, who will have 50% retained, by the way, I think they will acquire Connor McMichael, a 2022 first-round pick, center Lars Eller, as well as defenseman Trevor Van Riemsdyk. Again, for the Caps, you do lose some depth, but Filip Forsberg will be an interesting addition for this team that could desperately use it. And once you get Mantha back from LTIR, that forward group looks a lot more nasty and is one of the better ones heading into the playoffs. This Caps team on paper, though, desperately needs some better options and could also trade for a different goaltender, but I feel like adding Forsberg will be an interesting idea, and it could correct a mistake they made a long time ago. Now again, a couple of these ideas might be a little bit outlandish, let's just say, but I want to hear in the comments down below, what do you guys think of my trade ideas? What do you agree, what do you disagree with, and what do you guys see being the trade offers and the potential trade in a Filip Forsberg exchange? Which teams you guys see being in on him? Which players do you guys see being traded? Let me know all your thoughts down below. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Make sure you share this video with your friends and get the Filip Forsberg trades out there, and click on this card for all my trade and signing content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.